Hey everybody. Today is a follow-up episode from March 2nd, 2021, episode 109, Building a Commercial Kitchen, Part 1. So today, in Part 2 of this series, we are going to talk about framing in the commercial kitchen. All right, so for those of you who did not catch that last episode, episode number 109, we talked about the backstory of the commercial kitchen at that time, how I ended up here, and how I ended up working on the construction of a commercial kitchen in the first place. So if you're interested in that, I would suggest you go check out the show notes, and you can find a link to episode 109 and hear all of the backstory right there. Today, we're going to dive right into the actual first step in the process of constructing the space. And this is episode number 117 of the All Around Growth podcast. And this show gives you some insight and tools to build the life and homestead of your dreams. My name is Rob Kaiser, and I am your host. Today is Friday, March 12th, 2021, and the title of today's show is Building a Commercial Kitchen, Part 2. Again, this has been the weekend project every year so far this year, or every weekend so far this year, and today is no different. This weekend is no different. Tonight I'll be cleaning up the barn a little bit to get ready for another big day tomorrow. But today we're going to dive right into what's up with framing the room and how we went about doing that. So for context, if you don't want to listen to that first episode, we are building this room inside a pole barn, which we sometimes refer to as a warehouse, depending on the context of the conversation. And if you're building a commercial kitchen, it's important to learn the laws and the regulations that apply in your state and your county. Because inspections by state, and oftentimes, inspections by the Department of Agriculture by the state oftentimes vary by the county. Now, we're not going to talk too much about that, but should you decide to move forward with building a commercial kitchen space, either on your property or somewhere else, it is highly recommended to do some research ahead of time, and it is also highly recommended to visit other sites of other people who are engaging in the very same activities that you are. And not to mention, it's probably worth visiting several other commercial kitchen spaces in your county, and this will allow you to gain some context and learn what is and isn't acceptable with regard to construction. You will find that most people are willing to talk and share experiences, and more specifically, oftentimes share what not to do. So anyways, if you decide to build a kitchen, the first thing you want to do is frame in the room. And like I said, or maybe I didn't say, I definitely did in the first episode, but we are building this room. We're framing in the commercial kitchen inside a pole barn. And this room, the commercial kitchen, is going to be attached to another room that we had already constructed inside that pole barn. And that room is an office. So the barn that we are working in is a typical 40 by 60. It's actually 40 by 64 pole barn. and the office on the one side is about 15 feet wide. And then the commercial kitchen space is also going to be about 15 feet wide. It's not going to take up the whole 40-foot length or width of the barn, but maybe about 30 feet, because the other 10 feet next to it is where the walk-in cooler that we constructed last year is built. And who knows, maybe we'll get into what we did to build the walk-in cooler with a CoolBot and all that in a future episode. And if you want to hear some detail on that, just let me know. Drop me a line, allaroundgrowth@gmail.com, or better yet, jump inside the Telegram community at t.me/allaroundgrowth. Let us know that you listened to this episode and that you want to hear more on the walk-in cooler. Okay, so because we've already built another room inside the barn or inside the warehouse, for the purposes of this room, we only really need to frame out 2 walls, because the third wall is the outside wall of the barn itself, and the fourth wall is the wall of the previously constructed office. So to make my talking points easier, and also to help you out as well if you decide to actually go this route, and you know, what I'm about to say applies to framing in of any room. So I've listed the materials that we used during the framing, and if you are framing in a wall or a room inside of a barn, this type of construction process that I'm about to outline is going to apply regardless of the purpose of the room that you are constructing. Okay? So, first of all, we've got 2 2x4x8 pressure treated pieces of lumber, and 6 2x6x8 pressure treated pieces. And those are going to serve as the bottom plates of the wall. The bottom plate makes direct contact with the cement floor of the pole barn, and I guess that's worth pointing out is we have a slab underneath the pole barn, so we are putting in a pressure treated bottom plate that's going to sit underneath the walls that we built. Now, we also have, we got about 16 wall studs, 2x4x8, and then we picked up about 50 that well, we didn't pick up, I hesitate because I'm thinking this through. We picked up some that were 8-foot lengths, and then others that were 92 5/8. And you can pick these up pre-cut studs, provided the dimensions of the room are being built to standard, I guess you could say. And the pre-cut wall studs made the construction that much easier. So, I'm sorry, actually it was 16 2x4x8s, and then the wall studs were actually 2x6x8, because the 6-inch wall is the outside wall of the commercial kitchen, And we are insulating the kitchen quite nicely and heavily because we want to maintain a current temperature or a constant temperature in that room, since the room is largely going to be used for fermentation. And the better insulated it is, the easier it's going to be to maintain that temperature, and the costs associated with maintaining the temperature are going to be as low as they possibly can be. Now, the sheathing of the wall, or what we are putting on the outside of the wall that faces the inside of the barn, is 1/2 inch 4x8 sheets of OSB. You can use plywood if you want. You could face it with drywall if you wanted to, but we chose OSB because that was the cheapest material, and also because on that outside wall we are simply going to build shelving and attach shelving to it. So it doesn't really matter what the what the wall material is. We framed this in late last year, and before the weather turned, I was at least able to get a coat of primer up there, and we are going to paint that wall white behind the shelving just to reflect a little bit of light if possible, and also give us the opportunity to install some easy LED lighting underneath the shelving if need be or desired, because that kind of lighting is cheap, but I digress. So, whoops, green light, I got the arrow. For those of you who aren't able to tell, I'm on the morning commute. So, we picked up 8 sheets of that. That's all we needed for the space. You may need more, you may need less, but all the materials that we used for the framing in are listed in the show notes, so you can adjust accordingly based on the dimensions of your room and what you need. For the roof, above the ceiling joists, we used plywood, 1/2 inch plywood. And it's actually not 1/2 inch, it's probably 15-30 seconds. And if you're building on if you're building a room that's attached to another room, you want your OSB and your plywood to match what you've built and already constructed. That way things are consistent and everything goes together well. Now, one thing I kind of glossed over were the ceiling joists, and we used 2x10 by 16 foot. So the room itself is actually closer to 15 feet wide, because the ceiling joists sit on top of that 6-inch wall. So we're gonna have about a 15 foot wide room, 15.5 feet, give or take. Anyways, so that's it. You've got your bottom plates, your wall studs, your ceiling joists, your wall sheathing, and your roof. What we did was we installed the bottom plates and attached them to the concrete with with nails, and I don't know what the little tool is called, but you throw in basically blanks, 22 caliber rounds, for lack of a better term, and this will give you the impact that's required to hammer through the bottom plate into the concrete. And then we built the walls, the 2x6 walls. We built those flat on the ground and then stood them up, leveled the wall, and then attached a couple of ceiling joists. Once the walls were up and the walls were level, we went ahead and attached the rest of the ceiling joists, and then we got the wall sheathing up. The roof is something that we still have yet to actually attach to the room, because the next step after framing the room in was not necessarily in the order that I'm about to state, but was insulation, interior walls, the fiberglass reinforced paneling, or commonly known as FRP, and then the electrical. And those 4 items are what we're going to get into in the next episode of this series on framing in a commercial kitchen. And what I will do in that episode is I will also provide some very basic cost estimates, so you can sort of get an idea of what you're looking at with the electrical and the fiberglass reinforced paneling, because that stuff is kind of pricey, along with what we decided to do with the interior walls and the electrical. So I didn't include any costs of the lumber that we used to frame in the room, because the lumber prices have changed, and they have increased pretty significantly over the past 12 to 18 months. We noticed quite a bump in the lumber prices as we built this room last year, in the year of the mighty pandemic. So I suspect lumber costs might actually vary based on availability, region, and all manners of things. So at the very least, there is a list of materials there, and that'll help you get an idea of what you need, and you can assemble a relatively easy cost list based on the material list that is in the show notes. So that is about it for today's episode, my friends. I hope that this show was of value to you, and if you think it was, and you'd like to support the show in some way, shape, or form, all that I'd ask you to do is share the episode with a friend, share it on social media. Just do what you can to get the word out there. We're trying to grow the show, trying to grow the audience, and anything that you can do to help with that is certainly appreciated. There is also a link in the show notes that you can use to click to rate and review the podcast. And that link will take you to Apple Podcasts. And at the time of this recording, that is where we are getting the most plays. And that is where the ratings and reviews have the most impact. So it's highly likely that you are listening to this through Apple Podcasts. And if so, click that link, give it a 5-star rating, and if you feel so inclined, give it a written review as well. Anything and everything helps. Ultimately, in the show notes, like I said, there's links to the material list. There's also a link to all past episodes and a link to the Telegram group. We've gotten some new people recently, and I would encourage you to check it out, join us, and engage in the conversation there. t.me/allaroundgrowth on your internet browser, or if you've got the Telegram Messenger app on your phone, just search in the groups for All Around Growth and you'll find us there. This is Rob Kaiser, and thank you.